Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here with another episode of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. And today my guest is Howard Prussack from High Meadows Farm. And Howard has been farming vegetables he's been in the industry for over 40 years or around 40 years. And Howard, why don't you just give your intro? Because again, it's extensive.
I know, thanks. It makes me sound really old, but as you know, I was a very precocious 7-year-old. So.
Yes.
So I'm not as old as I am. But I actually started in 1971.
Okay.
I started working on a new startup organic vegetable farm in Vermont called, not too pretentiously named, Nature Farms.
Okay.
And it was in Westminster West, right outside of Putney. And it was sort of a collective but commercial farm run by Samuel Kamen, who later went on to start Stonyfield Yogurt, as you know.
Yes.
And anyway, it was a group. There might have been about 20 of us, and we were living in teepees and in the woods. And like I said, it was semi-communal. It was a blast, especially for me coming from Brooklyn. It was like a whole life changed. And it was in Vermont, and it was summertime, and it was gorgeous. And basically all of Samuel's knowledge came from Rodale's Encyclopedia of Organic Gardening, which was about the only bit of information you could get back then on organic gardening. We went around with a big dump truck shoveling bat guano from churches and town hall attics for fertilizer. And it was quite amazing what we grew. We grew actually acres and acres of stuff, and we did have tractors, and we started doing cover crops and rotations, and started selling it to supermarkets in Boston. We were, at that point might have been the largest organic grower in Vermont in 1971. Started using commercial compost from Pennsylvania called Earthright, made by Zook and Rank, two Amish guys who actually drove up to visit because they couldn't want to see who was buying so much of their compost. And they were great. Anyway, that farm lasted 2 years. They went at it. Samuel left and the farm fell apart. I stayed there, and I sort of put it together piece by piece over the next 2 years. I started a farmer's market in Brattleboro. I started growing vegetables, delivering it to New York City in my little Datsun pickup truck, getting all of 15 cents a pound for organic Green Mountain potatoes, 12 cents a pound for cabbage.
Whoa.
And a whopping 75 cents a pound for tomatoes. That was the moneymaker. Flats of tomatoes for 75 cents a pound. And my vegetable farmer friends down in the valley, they thought I was a crook because I was getting 15 cents a pound for potato. My prices to them for around here was like, holy smoke, Prussack, you're quite the crook. They were funny. It was funny. But down there in the city, they went nuts. They couldn't get enough. And it was quite a deal. Anyway, by 1979, I actually bought my own farm just down the road, a couple thousand yards down the road. It was 50 acres, house, barns, $90,000. No money down, and it was totally financed through Farmer FHA at the time. Now it's SA, through Jimmy Carter's limited resource program that he started. I got flown up to Poland Spring, Maine, to get introduced to this whole program. It was quite a groundbreaking thing at the time. And it got me a farm, no money down. And
that's stealing in Vermont. I mean, the prices of land now are what, 20 times that?
Oh, now, yeah. Back then, back then it was a very expensive farm. It was considered to be, it was the most expensive farm that was sold in the county. Like, there
Yeah.
was no comparables.
Wow.
So, but I didn't know any better, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, this looks good. It's like, oh, a house, it's got a real bathroom and it's like land, it's like, okay. And there were
Yeah.
cows in the barn. There was a dairy farmer there. And I told him, oh, no, you could stay there for a year because I was still using the land up the road.
Yeah. And that's
So,
the farm you have now.
yeah, I did not move. I moved
Okay.
once in 49 years.
Okay, because and that's not even, I mean, it has good land because I've been there, but it's quite a hilly farm.
It's rolling hills. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not very steep. Some, they might exceed what you would want, and I don't
Hmm.
plow those hills. So it's not 50 acres of farmland. There's probably 5 acres of hardwoods, and we've added to it. I bought another 15 acres across the road, beautiful forested land, really nice with a cabin. But as far as land goes, it's 35 acres of tillable farmland. But yeah, it's hard to find that now for sure. I turned down at the time, the woman I bought it from offered me another 40 acres on the other side of the stream for another $40,000. And I just said, no, it was like, it was blowing my mind, like the numbers, it
Hmm.
was numbers, like it was way too much land for me to even think of. I had one tractor and a rototiller. It was like, and a Planet Junior. It's like, it's little beyond my capabilities. Um, but it worked out really well. That same year, I actually scored a $12,000 grant from the Department of Energy to put up our first greenhouse.
Oh, wow.
They had a grant program that year if you could tie it into some sort of
Hmm.
energy saving thing, and I did, and I got the largest grant that they awarded nationally that year. So 1979 was a good year for me. I got my
Yeah.
farm, I got a greenhouse, which I'm still using. So if you buy quality to begin with, it
Yeah.
it pays.
Which greenhouse is that one?
Oh, it's not a Criterion Nexus. It's a Nexus.
Okay. And is that the one at the top of the hill? That's your
Yeah,
propagation?
it's a round
Yes.
oval, which
Yeah.
it was the only one of that type I put up. And if it wasn't built so strong, it wouldn't have held up. But we've had so much snow on it. I actually have walked over the top of that greenhouse because there was so much snow, and I would take my kids up there with sleds, and we would slide off the top of that greenhouse. I've got great pictures of that when they were little. So it's a well-built house,
Yeah.
and
Because
forced ventilation.
yeah, you just got a massive snowstorm up there last week.
24 inches,
24 inches.
which
Wow.
is actually the biggest storm we've had in a bunch of years, and it's beautiful snow.
Yeah.
And up here, snow is money for the
Yes.
economy. So many guys, run plow trucks and the skis, and it's
Hmm.
just endless. So everybody all smiles, and it looks pretty. I've been
Yes.
snowshoeing every day. That's my winter exercise. So I strap them on and I go walking around the farm. I was following coyote tracks yesterday, through the fields and into the woods. Not everybody gets a chance to do that.
No.
So it was great. So that was a good year for me. I built a farm stand in the early 80s. I was marketing locally in the 70s, and I was driving down to New York City with vegetables and maple syrup. Actually, I started selling maple syrup to Macy's, to Bloomingdale's, to Zabar's, you name the top store in New York City and Manhattan, and I had my maple syrup in there. And this goes into marketing, and I'll talk a little about that. Like, how
Hmm.
did I do that? And for me, it was easy, and I'll tell you how. So I built a small farm stand under the eve of a vacated car dealership in the 80s I rented,
Hmm.
and built up a local trade that way. I hired somebody to run it, to man it, and brought down truckload of stuff every day, and that went good. And from there, I built a bigger market in the mid 80s. Down the road, I bought a half acre of commercial property for $75,000, and I put up a fancy ass market. and I ran that I built that in 91. No, I sold it in 91, getting ahead of myself. Sold that for $440,000 and sort of moved on from there to other things. I took an 8-year semi-sabbatical from my business, and I became a sales rep for natural food companies for New England, traditional medicinals, Lundberg Farms, Muir Glen, Amy's Frozen Foods, basically all the top natural food
Uh-huh.
companies. I was in New England rep. And for traditional medicinals, I had like the smallest territory in the country, but I was a top salesman. So it just, again, we get back to sales and how, what drives a farm, what makes a farm successful. And it's selling, because all farmers could be great at growing stuff, and that's the easy part. But finding a market and selling it and making a profit, that's where it gets dicey. That's where you start separating the wheat from the chaff, and we'll get into that a little more. I was selling into Whole Foods stores in New England, and gave me a break of how to understand how those big chains work, how they buy, how to deal with them, what they wanted. And when I went back into farming full time, I kept my Rolodex, or my day timer, I would call it now.
Yeah.
And I had all the names and the phone numbers, and it was like, hey, I'm selling potted herbs now instead of Lundberg rice cakes. And that worked. That was one of the tools. So the bottom line is, for me, whatever you do in life could get the experience that you gain in business, in any business, becomes useful to you down the road. And make friends wherever you go, because you meet the same people on the way up that you're going to need when you're on your own. And so that was always my guiding light. So basically, I left that sales business in year 2000. I went into the farm full time. I already had an existing greenhouse, and we stocked it and started growing things. And I bought a truck and delivering it all over, adding stores. I had a map with pins, and every time I added a store, stick a pin in the map, and we were off and running. And we now we're in 4 states, and we have our own trucks and a driver. And so 4 days of the week, we're running at least 1 or 2 full trucks out of the farm, to delivering along the way. And oh yeah, and you'll love this one. And we charge for delivery.
So, and you're focused mostly, again, you do a little bit of a wide range, but the majority of your business is a horticulture, which would be vegetable transplants, potted plants, potted herbs, that sort of thing.
Exactly. We used to do hanging baskets. I used to do perennials. I used to do mums. But as you know, we pared down the business over the years. I call it category management. And my strategy of doing more with less. And every time we got rid of a line, our sales would go up, because the focus gets focused on what we have left. And people because we are charging for delivery, they don't cut back on the order. They're paying the same price, whether they order 100 or 500 or 1,000. So they order as much as they could logistically use. So that strategy worked out. So the business breaks down into about 75% horticulture, 25% vegetables. And now the vegetables actually are creeping up to about 1/3 of the business, because we have shrunk down on a horticulture. Now, Whole Foods was a nice $75,000 a year contract. We actually had a contract with them, and that's how it works for them. We delivered to their central warehouse in Cheshire, Connecticut, and on Sunday, and then on Monday, my plants turned up in 28 different Whole Foods markets Monday morning on their own trucks. So it was pretty sweet. But we gave that up after 8 years, because what it was, I was working 6 days a week really hard, and my reward was that on Sunday I had to work even harder to load, fulfill the orders, load the trucks, and all that jazz. So it was at some point, it was, as much as I hated giving up the sales. It's like
Yeah.
we gave it up. But what was so strange is that our other sales picked up almost all the business.
Mhm.
So our gross sales that year didn't go down $75,000. It got picked up the other stores. I just
Mhm.
sort of organically grew because I was able to focus on the remaining stores. So it gets category management for
Yeah.
me. So
Well,
our sales peaked at $550,000 3 years ago, and we've been trimming it back uh, since a little
wow.
bit every year.
So,
Um,
and I think the other thing too is with categorical management too, you're doing a better job at what's left because now when you're not growing mums anymore, you suddenly don't have to manage mums. You can focus that management time, that management effort, the management thought process. Because I think, all of us as farmers think we're really smart. And one aspect, farmers have one of the hardest jobs out there because there's so many little things to think about, especially with the weather. But when you can focus that on less things to think about, less categories, you can do each category better.
well, retail is detail, and
Mm.
it's the same with farming. Basically, we're retailing on a wholesale level, but yeah, less reduced items, uh, sales increase on what's left. I tell the story that Tesla has 3 items. They're worth more as a company than all the American car and truck companies combined times 5. Okay, they have
Wow.
3 items.
Yeah.
Why is that? Well, they're innovative, sure, but their focus, their focus,
Mhm.
a focus company. Apple, 1997 had 250 items. In 2011, they had 7 items. That's all they had in 2011.
Wow.
And their company experienced a tenfold increase in business.
Mhm.
Steve Jobs, when he went back to there in '97, he just took a look at their lineup and said, "This is nuts," and just got rid of like tons of stuff. So my business plan was several things. Offered, I was giving my stores new business and profits from items they never sold before. I went after accounts that didn't traditionally sell potted herbs. And I didn't want to steal anybody else's business. I didn't want to start growing lettuce and bump, Joe
Mhm.
Bove out of his lettuce sales. I wanted to create new opportunities for my stores, which gave them an incentive to buy from me. Wow, this is a new item. Yeah, let's try that. So I bought racks, and we would set racks up in the stores or outside the stores. The racks are on wheels so they could wheel them in if they wanted. And I went to non-traditional stores, grocery stores, food co-ops, and then I did go to garden centers who
Mhm.
hadn't had lines of organic potted herbs and vegetable starts. And then I guaranteed the sales. All right.
Okay.
I picked up returns if anything was crappy because we were there weekly, and we would take anything
Yep.
bad and take them back. So it's another thing that set us apart.
Did you ever
Um,
have a problem with people not caring for the products and obviously,
yes,
so you,
yes, and
you did do education?
I dropped the counts.
Okay.
I dropped the counts. If it became yeah, I toyed with, well, maybe I should hire somebody who just follows me around, 2 days later to
Yeah.
all the accounts, and kind of, take care of them and improve them. And I did that actually. Some local stores, my wife would go into our local store or two and would pretty them up and straighten them out. And it did increase sales, but I couldn't scale it up. And I found it was easy at some point just to like cut those stores off,
Mhm.
and focus on the ones that made me money. You know, 80% of my sales were coming from 20% of my
Mhm.
items and 20% of my account. So it's easy to get rid of the laggards and focus. So now we have 10 greenhouses, about 28,000 square feet of heated space. Um, and the business just grew on its own. I knew
Mhm.
when I restarted the business, my theory was I had no expectations, so that I would exceed I would
Yeah.
exceed my low expectations, and I wouldn't pressure myself, and that philosophy worked really well. But now, I am a very competitive person, so I just just kept on adding and went to it and went to it. But now we sort of we're settled into a plateau, and just doing maintenance and upgrades and new doors on the greenhouses, fans and stuff like that. 10 greenhouses is a lot of maintenance work. And that's, I always worry when people tell me they're going to put up a lot of, start adding greenhouses, that they're not maintenance free,
Yes.
they're high maintenance things. And I'm in a very windy area, and it snows and it rains, and things break and doors blow off, and you learn a lot of tricks. How do doors not blow off? Well, we started putting in sliding doors, and then where that wasn't appropriate, we have doors that open inward. So the wind wouldn't catch the door and throw it again,
Yes.
bust the hinges off. So you learn those tricks over
So,
time. Go on.
yeah, what brands do you have for the tunnels?
Mostly they're Harnois.
Hmm.
I got those on the recommendation of Mike Collins, actually, way
Yep.
back. He said, bang for the buck, and they're very generous in the amount of hardware they give you. There's always extra. It's like you're not
Yes.
getting down to, we're down, we need a nut. They weigh the parts out. So you get these bags of bolts and bags of nuts, and there's always extras, like lifetime extras of nuts and bolts and things. And they're really rugged. They're made in Quebec, so they're going to handle, the
Yeah.
snow load. And they're self-ventilating. The tops crank open, and you could roll up the sides. And so the only fans are interior HAF fans. There's no exhaust fans. So I like that a lot, because my old Nexus had these huge exhaust fans, and it
Yeah.
would suck the moisture out of there, and I had to water it, like 3 times a day. It's like all I was doing was watering it.
Yeah.
So I like the Harnois.
Now, so that's like a ridge vent is what that's considered.
It is.
Yep.
It is a ridge vent.
Now, have you seen some of the new greenhouse fans, which instead of like a HAF, like a horizontal, they're a vertical fan, which basically they almost put like a big ceiling fan right in the peak.
No, I haven't seen those.
Yeah, Ray
No.
Tyler, I was literally down at his place last week, and he literally was installing them that day. And
Mhm.
very interesting. He says it feels like it keeps it warmer because
Keeps it warmer.
it's pulling out that hot air right from the peak, especially during the wintertime, and forcing that air all the way down, compared to horizontal airflow, which doesn't actually get up into the peak. It's just it's just circulating the air that's down further.
Oh, so it's an exhaust fan, or is it a circulating fan?
It's a circulating fan, but it's like
Oh, okay, sure.
It's like putting a regular ceiling fan right in your peak. And so it
Sure.
basically circulates from the top all the way to the bottom, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, that was popular during the energy crisis of the late 70s and early 80s. There was a small version of it. You would mount them up in the peak, and they would blow down through a tube to sort of recirculate the hot air. I had a jet tube fan,
Oh, interesting.
which was real popular for a long time. And it was along the peak, and there was a plastic tube that ran the length of the greenhouse, and it would basically circulate the air down from the top. And I liked that a lot, but the big fan was very noisy, and I was happy to pull that out and just go with the HAFs.
So walk us through the growing season for you, because obviously, I mean, in the greenhouse is one very specific part of your business, but then you move out into the field. I know you also do some hemp. So talk us through how the season progresses for you.
Okay, sure. Well, we actually start mid-January. We start doing seeding of we have heated benches, and that's the only house I keep running year round now. We seed day neutral and alpine strawberries from seed, and because we sell those by the thousands, and they look really nice, and we sell those in April and May. They actually have fruit on it. So we start with that, and then weekly we'll start adding whatever the master plan. We've got records from going back from 20 years, planting schedules, and my wife Lisa does a weekly and a daily printout of what needs to get planted that day, what item, how many seeds, how many trays, and that sort of thing. So it's pretty scheduled once we get up and running. So, but it's, it's not high pressure. We're not shipping anything. So
Hmm.
February, we're doing that, and into March. And then by then we're transplanting into March, in the greenhouse. And we open up greenhouses as they get full. Some of them are heated with propane. Some of them are heated with oil.
Okay. Now, question for you on greenhouses. Larger greenhouses, but less of them, or more smaller greenhouses so you can turn them on and off a lot easier?
Now, it depends on topography as well. Um, I mean, big greenhouses are more efficient. There's no way you could get around that.
Hmm.
But by having smaller greenhouses, I'm sort of zoning them and opening up a
Yeah.
zone that way. And also, you're keeping insects and disease isolated.
Hmm.
So, there's two sides you could play with it. I've been to very big operations that have just multiples of smaller greenhouses as well as some big ones. It depends on the crop. But, most operations, they start with smaller greenhouses. It's hard to start with a big vision. If you start too big from the beginning, it might be a disaster. Uh, the landscape is dotted with empty greenhouses that went
Hmm.
bankrupt after a few years. So you really need to grow as cautiously.
Hmm.
Throwing money at a problem or a solution as a solution to a problem that doesn't yet exist is never a good strategy. So I like building them as I needed them. But the big
Gotcha.
ones are awesome. It's great working. After working in smaller tunnels, and then you get into a full-size greenhouse with a 15-foot peak, and it's what a
Hmm.
difference. It's working conditions are much better in a big greenhouse, and we love them for that. So that's where we do our work, is in the bigger greenhouses.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've gotten into, I think you said April, you're transplanting. When's the first truck leave the farm with product?
Um, Third week of April,
Okay.
we start rolling. And what's cool is that we're in Vermont, but we're in the corner of Vermont, so we actually could service 4 states really easily. 25 minutes south, I'm in Massachusetts. 20 minutes to the east, I'm in New Hampshire. I could be in Connecticut. In an hour from my dooryard, I could be in downtown Hartford. Um,
Mm.
so we've been ideally located for that from the get-go, and that wasn't planned. That's just the way it happened. So we'll start doing. They start out small, and mostly the first loads are going towards Connecticut because they're earlier, and
Yeah.
that's where the demand is. And then as the season progresses and Massachusetts starts opening up, and then way up in Burlington, as we have the largest garden centers in Vermont, and they have big indoor ranges, so they could take stuff in early, and they want to fill their greenhouses up early. Garden Supply Company,
Hmm.
you know them,
Yeah.
and so that starts getting. Then by then we're running full crew, and at our peak we had a dozen people working here, um, and because of COVID this year, we managed to work with just 4 people here and do virtually the same work we do all the time. So we learned a lot of labor saving things. But by then I'm almost into the field. I'll start my field, my squash um, starts in May. The greenhouse, we do tomato house. Of course, and the graftings are done in April, early April. Um, and that's been an interesting thing to get into. We were doing a lot of custom grafting
Hmm.
for other growers, um, and we still might do some because Johnny's apparently isn't taking orders anymore for
Yeah.
grafted seedlings. So I'm getting a lot of calls, but it's pretty. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It's stressful. That's why I got
Yeah.
out of it. It was it was very stressful. Meeting people's what they want, when they want it. It's like, wow, it's a lot of work. Um, but it was a nice dollar in April to
Yeah.
deliver uh, thousands of dollars worth of plugs to one grower and this and that. So it was nice. And then the hemp grows so quick, there's no need to start it early. We were shipping. I told my hemp people that we sell the hemp seedlings to, you don't need it before the end of May. So really, we started seeding it at the end of April or first week of May, and 30, 45 days, you've got some beautiful hemp seedlings. And yeah, we sold thousands and thousands of those seedlings, and that's been where we made our hemp money, as well as selling our our trim bud later in
Yeah.
the season. So we got on board early. We got Vermont licensed to do that 3 years ago, and we made our name and our quality, and there we were. Because good seed, people are selling just poor quality seeds of unknown origin, and,
Hmm.
and and people were getting really weird things growing in their field, and they really were no good. But we used proven varieties, and there was a big demand for that. So it worked out great. Hemp for me has been a good thing, but I know a
Yeah.
lot of people have been disappointed.
Well, I think a lot of people went into it and so I think goes back to some people get into farming because they love the lifestyle. It's a long-term thing for them, and they figure out their niche and they make it work. And that was kind of like what you did. Other people get into it because they thought the hemp was a quick, rich, get rich quick scheme. And so
Absolutely.
they went into it for the wrong reasons. They scaled way too quickly. They didn't have the sales, as you said earlier. And that really got them in trouble because they were sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, supposedly hundreds of thousands of dollars, which ended up only being tens of thousands of dollars when the market crashed, because everyone was growing it, and their quality was awful because they couldn't do a good job curing because they tried to grow too much with insufficient stuff.
No, they had no
Yeah.
drying capabilities.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you and I, like the hemp became legalized. You and I started that Facebook group. That thing exploded.
Yeah, it was
And
a lot of fun watching that happen.
oh, yeah. And then I kind of backed off because we just saw the writing on the wall and how it was actually, hurting people. Um, but you kind of lasted through it because you chose a very specific niche in the hemp industry,
Right.
and providing, again, certified organic, high quality.
And I
um,
didn't
yeah,
invest much. I didn't
yeah,
invest anything. Growing seedlings that's my DNA. That's what we do.
yeah,
So it's just a matter of buying seed. It was just another seed to me. It's like basil seed, it
yes,
didn't matter. So I didn't have a lot of invested. A lot of people invested a lot of money in things they shouldn't have had. People who weren't farming, all of a sudden they were hemp farmers. And,
hmm,
it was tragic. I talked a lot of people out of doing it. They would show up on my farm. I had a guy showed up in a big Mercedes once, and he said, "I want to be a hemp farmer." And I looked at him and said, "No, you don't." So he left.
but yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like, the thing with the hemp industry is people got so rabid. It was almost a gold rush that you couldn't find drip tape, you couldn't find plastic, you couldn't get compost. I was talking to Carl Hammer, and Carl said, I am sold out because so many hemp farmers are trying to buy compost.
Right, right.
um,
Well, Trevor Harding, he did really well over
oh
there.
yeah.
He had a blast selling equipment. And yeah, it's like anything else. People chase the silver bullet, but I didn't get into that. I got into farming because I don't know why. Why did I do that again? It I- you know, growing organic vegetables. It just seemed like what else? It just
Mhm.
seemed to be, it made sense to me. Grow things that are healthy. So
Yeah.
I got into it that way, and I was fortunate that the business side, I grew into it, with the right attitude.
Yeah.
And then so anyway, we do segue into the field, and then the field becomes almost my sole responsibility while the crew is running the greenhouses. I oversee it, make sure that things are fertilized, and I'll do the technical things,
Mhm.
and all that. But I'm running the tractor, I'm plowing, preparing the fields, and then when the day comes when I need a lot of labor, I kind of steal everybody after the truck's loaded, and we all go on the transplanter, and we're banging in
Mhm.
the squash plants or the tomato house. And I do allocate certain projects to certain people. Like the tomato house, I'll give to Imelda, and
Mhm.
she'll do a great job. And Vanessa will, do it, and they string it up. And so I just kind of watch it. I'll till it up, but I let them do the whole job. Uh, the celery, which was a new venture last year, and this year I went into it big time. Me and Imelda set it up, but then I let it go to her to finish the planting on her own, and that worked out really well. So I try to. One thing you have to do when you're being the manager of a farm is letting go, and you find out that you're sort of managing people. You're not the planter. You're not
Mhm.
you're not doing everything. You have to learn how to let it go if you're going to expand and be big enough to make a decent living. And that was always my goal. I only wanted to live a nice middle class life and make enough money so that I could, do those things and have,
Mhm.
I had three boys, and I'm proud of that. They're all out on their own, and now I've got a daughter now, and she's out on her own. And that was my goal. I never wanted to get. I knew you couldn't get rich farming, although I do know rich farmers,
Mhm.
but
Yes.
they're few and far between. But as far as Vermont goes, and I'm proud. We're definitely in the top tier for net income, but it's taken me a long time to get there.
Mhm.
Um, if I could do it all over again, I mean, yeah, you mentioned I got a pretty hilly farm. Uh, it's really scenic for
Yes, it's
sure.
beautiful.
But, I do envy those pictures of flat fields that I see.
Yes.
It's like, what? Where are the hills? Where are the rocks? Did someone take So I got that. I got hills, I got rocks, but it gives me something to do. And,
Yes.
it's like that movie Dodgeball. If you could dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball. And if you could farm on a hillside with rocks, you could farm anywhere. So I could do that.
Mhm.
I've learned a lot farming
Yeah.
up here. And
So
yeah,
so with the field crops, you've picked very specific crops and you do them at a little bit larger scale. So you do things like garlic, onions, tomato, no, sorry, squash. I think you do some leeks.
we do
Um,
leeks, tomatoes,
yep.
is big, and now celery. And my goal is like it has to reach certain dollar size to make it
Hmm.
interesting. And so you could set these goals like, oh, we got to do $5,000 worth of something to make it a keeper. Originally, I only had 6 vegetable crops. Now it's up to maybe 12, but still, um, most of my sales are coming from just several crops. Winter squash, and Vern said, "Gee, everybody tells me winter squash is the lowest profitable crop." I said, "Well, if you grow enough of it, it's a big profitable crop."
Yes.
So, you know,
Well, but then also you grow it in very clean systems too. So you
I
have
do. Very low
mechanicalized.
labor.
Yeah.
It's on black plastic with drip, and I don't use ground cover on the winter squash for cleanup reasons, but all
Yes.
my other crops, I do use ground cover between the beds of plastic. So it's virtually a sealed field. All
Yeah.
right. And then we
Weed free.
cover on, say, the winter squash, right after we transplant it in, we cover the entire field, and we're talking about almost 2 acres with remay. Okay, the
Hmm.
entire field with no hoops. Um, we used to do hoops, and finally, by accident, we ran out of hoops on the outer 2 rows, and it's like, wow, they did great. So we
Yeah.
just got rid of the hoops, which were a huge labor saver, putting those hoops up. Um, in
Yeah.
a smaller place, hoops are fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's more labor, and you're dragging the remake over the hoops and that on. So it's anyway, we got rid of the hoops. It's covered with remake for like 4 weeks, 5 weeks, until the plants are really firm. And when they start to run, and
Yeah.
they're pushing up, that remake is like way up in the air, and then we'll pull it off. And by then the plants are really strong, and whatever few cucumber beetles, that's what my big bane, and squash bugs,
Hmm.
which I hate. And but by then the plants are really on their own, and I rarely have to spray them, maybe once a year, and I have an air blast sprayer.
Yeah.
And
So do
yeah.
you do any cultivation on the winter squash then?
I do. Do one. When we pull that remake
Yep.
off, I try to time it so it's ready to come off and stay off, but I could still go over the plants. And uh, using my tractor and a cultivator, I'll just run up and down. So the field is really clean. Once in a while, uh, I can't get my tractor in on some of the rows. Like some of the rows trick me, and when you take off the remay, and I can't get through, and we might
Mhm.
have to run through there with hose, or sometimes I'll even take my little garden, my
Yep.
BCS, and and run it through to clean it up, because that all pays off later on. You don't want a weedy field. The worst year I ever had was when um, orchard grass like just established and shot up, and you could not see the squash, and you had to walk and sort of with your feet and find the butternut.
Oh
Um,
gosh,
and
yes.
that's just not fun.
No.
And I hate showing, my fields have to look pretty. It's what we pride ourselves in. A pretty field is going to be a profitable field. Weeds don't make you money. I learned that like, in year
Mm.
one. You're not making, if in a weedy field, it's over. I've tilled in fields that were weedy, that weren't worth the labor. I just had to call it and said, no, we're not going to put the work in. I'll till it and we'll move on to something else. So you got to know when to pull the plug on a crop. Luckily, I don't have to do that anymore. So my crops that I put in, they're all predetermined, limited things like winter squash. Mostly I do transplants because it eliminates so much weeding. I do carrots direct seeded, and I flame them. But even beets I transplant, celery, almost everything transplantable. Uh, I'll transplant. But again, I'm doing limited crops. I don't do greens. I didn't want to get involved with the wash water and the
Mhm.
hygiene involved. We're GAP certified, but I just knew greens were going to be problematic. And for me, a small grower of greens, I just didn't see the profit in it. It just, there's no poundage there for me. I didn't want to do it. And there are people doing greens. It's like,
Mhm.
I don't want to compete with other local people who already have their niche, and I don't want to break in selling greens. So we do other things. That's all.
Mhm.
And that works, and that works out. Find your niche, grow for it, grow the best quality you can, and make it profitable. By making it profitable, I mean, basically it's keeping your labor
Yes.
low. And we pay our labor well.
Oh, you
Uh,
pay very well.
yeah, we do. We pay, above what most everybody does in the area, and we're giving people raises. So our average, uh, you know, wage here is $20 an hour. And that's on the books, by the way. And I'm
Yeah.
always proud to say that. And I know a lot of farmers who, pay on, it's a cash business. I get that. And way in the beginning, I did that too. But at some point, you got to grow up and man up. And I know, sadly, farmers who never paid into Social Security because they really cheated. They never pay,
Yeah.
claimed what they made. Well, now they were trying to retire, and guess what? You try living on minimum Social Security, which is like $230 a month. That's not fun.
No.
And they thought they would save it up. Well, it's very hard to save money on your own. It sounds nice. It's
Yeah.
really hard. So at least Social Security, it's something, and now these people have nothing. But by not paying your workers on the books, you're also cheating them. You're not giving them their Social Security, and
Mhm.
and that's not right. So anyway, we played the right game. That came back. As you know, it paid off this year with the
Mhm.
federal and state COVID money, because we did have books to show, and
Mhm.
we were rewarded for that. And it was sort of probably a once in a lifetime thing. So I'm thankful that we did it the legitimate
Yeah.
way. I'm proud of that.
Well, and it also means that you have incredible team. I mean, you have some team that have been with you literally since I knew you years and years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Richard's like at year 20, I think.
Hmm.
Imelda's going to be like 9 years,
Hmm.
um, and Vanessa are about the same. So, yeah, I can't be that much of an SOB to work for. So,
I'll have to ask them that question.
you do when I'm not around. But sometimes me and Richard, it's like we're like an old married couple routine.
Yes, yes, yes.
But you do, there's such a savings when people know what to do. and they tell me what to do lots of times. And
Yeah.
believe me, I appreciate it. It's great. It's like, did you do, Richard, did you do that? Or Vanessa will go, did you do that? And I didn't. They remind me when I
Yeah.
screw up. So it's great. A good team is invaluable, worth whatever it takes to put together. My mentors, when I started, were older farmers that were around, and there were lots of them at the time. Mostly they were dairy farmers because Vermont's a dairy farm state. But there's no vegetable way to drive a tractor, or no organic way to drive a tractor. There's a way to drive a tractor. And
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
and they taught me that, they taught me how to drive a tractor. They taught me how to work hard. And that's who I learned from. When I had equipment problems, they would come over and help me adjust the wheel spacing on my first corn planter and all this kind of stuff. And, it's invaluable. So, I'm almost that guy now to other farmers, and
Yeah.
it's fine. I like it. That'll be my retirement thing if I ever do. I'm available. So,
Yes.
but my money goes into labor saving and mechanization. And I know one of the questions, like, what was your best tool I ever bought? And I guess when I finally grew up and bought a 4-wheel drive tractor, that was one of the best things I ever did. I put it off because he said, well, if you need 4-wheel drive to be in the field, you shouldn't be in the field. But that's not the only reason to have a 4-wheel drive tractor.
Yes.
It's just so much more accurate. And the pulling power and the way it tracks, and it's allowed me to run the equipment so much better. And the other thing would be better bookkeeping skills. If I had taught myself better bookkeeping skills, would have helped earlier. Luckily, my wife, who is she ran the books for a very large company that got sold to another even larger company. So she does the books, does the payroll, runs the spreadsheets. So we break down every crop, and I know weekly what our gross sales are. So timely entry is really important. Not waiting like me back in the old day. At the end of the year, I would spend 2 days adding up figures. That's not a good way to run a business. There's proper ways to run a business, and weekly P&L, if you can do it, is great, because we have payroll weekly. So of course it sort of forces us to know what we're doing, and sales, and we can know, well, last year, we're behind on this day last year, we did this much sales, and I would get a kick from Lisa, got to sell more stuff, So,
Yes.
you don't want to fall behind last year. So that always kept me going. I wish I had learned Spanish. I struggle with a foreign language. I took Spanish in high school, which means nothing.
Same here.
So, and I love them. I do have friends who have Mexicans working for them, and I love them. They're just so awesome. And I have friends who run Jamaicans, and I borrow them once or twice a year for big jobs where I need a big crew, and they're also awesome and a lot of fun. They love harvesting hemp.
Yes.
It's like they're all smiles when it comes to hemp, and they show me things that I did not know or I didn't catch. So you can learn from anybody. But Lisa runs the numbers. She tracks all the items and sales, does the planting schedules. I implement the plan. I run the crew, run the physical plant, do the maintenance, direct the crew, load the trucks, do sales, although now that's mechanized, so that we send out an availability list for the plants and the produce. And it's all on email now. I rarely have to call people up, which is really nice. And our trucks, they're DOT certified because we're in 4 states. We've got a driver that's been with us for several years, and he loves doing it. And then he goes on, he's a musician and a painter, and it fills a nice niche.
Yeah.
I used to do the deliveries myself. So it's an interest. I liked it, but obviously you can't run a farm and be in the truck at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah.
But tomatoes have always been a mainstay. garlic, and we got into black garlic, as you know, like 5 years ago.
Yep.
And that's been awesome. Still selling that. We used to do mums, and I did bulbs and perennials and hanging baskets by the thousands. But we cut back and we focused. Running flowers and hanging baskets were a real problem because of insects. We
Oh,
didn't have access to the same biocontrols that we have now. Hanging baskets are they're breeding grounds for aphids, and they also steal light from your
yeah.
crop underneath. So we pared down and got to what we got. But the vegetables are a lot of fun. We do make money at it. The farmers markets have been great for us. We stopped doing it this year and did only a pre-order market, which was a new experience, and it also worked great. I love that concept. So many people, including myself, have been forced to learn whole new tricks this year with internet
Yeah.
and pre-ordering and all that stuff, and that's been great.
Back with another marketing tip is Cole Jones from Local Line. Cole, what are we talking about today?
Well, we want to dial in today on something that we see happen maybe a little bit too often, which is farms focused on selling their customers every single time that they talk to them. There is such a thing as overdoing it, and I think that this is something that is not thought of all the time and needs to be well understood. So if you're a farm or a farmer, we know that in most cases you do not think of yourself as a salesperson, and as a result, when you go to try to sell your products or when you talk to customers, you're kind of always pitching them, always pitching, selling. And when you do this, it actually really dilutes any significance that you have when you do have a true promotion or when you do have a real sale or something to push. And so what we want to do is we recommend with the farms that we work with, scroll your social feeds, look at your newsletters to customers, and do a quick audit for yourself on how many times out of 10, as an example, that you engage with your customers. Are you trying to sell them something? Versus, are you trying to engage them in your story and engage them in what you're doing on the farm? Because we know that a big pull for buying direct from a farm is the emotional attachment that we get from wanting to understand what goes into producing great products, the family that's producing them. And so we always want to recommend that balance. So our sort of tip is do the audit on your site, on your social feeds, and on your newsletters, whatever you're doing to communicate with customers. And if most of the time you're talking to them, you're trying to sell something instead of educate them on the farm and tell your story, you probably need to dial back the sales a little bit. You want to find a healthy balance between sharing the exciting things that are going on. And then, of course, when you have product or a sale or, extra things to sell, then focus on it, sure. But it shouldn't be all the time.
Okay, so you're saying like the weekly newsletter shouldn't just be like, we've got beef tip on sale. It's like, here's what's happening on the farm. And then, oh, by the way, further down the newsletter, we do have beef tip.
Yeah, listen, even if you want to open with beef tip, that's fine. But if every single newsletter that you send focuses on selling beef tip, I think that you're probably missing a broader opportunity to build a deeper relationship with your customers.
They want to know more about you and the family than just beef tip.
Local food, buying from your farmer is not supposed to be a hyper transactional relationship. It's supposed to be a relationship that's built on shared values. And I think that if all you're trying to do is promote something that could get viewed as a commodity, beef tip, when it's not a commodity at all, it's really about what went into producing that product. You know what I mean? I think that those are two conflicting messages. And I think that just the natural thing for farmers, once they wrap their head around, okay, I got to sell this product, is like sell. And that's good. That's good. But we can't lose sight of why ultimately the customer is coming to buy from you.
All right. Well, Cole, thank you so much for another tip today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, talk a second about the farmers market, because you have, did you say it's the oldest farmers market in Vermont?
The second oldest by a year.
Okay. And they charge a percentage of sales.
We charge as a
Yeah.
member. We charge ourselves 3% of sales. There's also a membership fee of $100 a year, and then we charge ourselves by the lineal footage that our booth takes up. I can't remember what the rate is, but I do know that it cost me about $700 for the lineal footage alone, and then the membership, and then there's a deposit for our site, and all that. So let's round it up. Say and then it's 3%
Yeah.
on top of the sales. So it's not a cheap market, but it's a super successful market that consistently brings in the sales. The other thing that we've been able to buy, and we own our own land now.
Yeah.
So we're one of the few in the country that we own our own site. We're designated the only entity in the town that can use the name Farmers Market. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but it is when somebody opens up a store and calls it a farmer's market.
Yeah.
And talk about confusing your customers. So for anybody listening and who is in good relations with the town, it's something to bring up if you have a board of directors of, getting that settled down. And the town supports us so well now, where originally it wasn't. It was a hard sell. A lot of people were against us, and it was a long, hard grind, but it's been like 40 something years now, and we are part of the fabric of the town. And we're a tourist attraction.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, Howard, with all your other sales, you don't need to go to the farmer's market.
No.
But you like to go to the farmer's market.
Exactly. I tell you the truth, if Imelda didn't want to do it, I wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
So Imelda and her now husband, Howard, not me, now do the farmer's market. And of course, I didn't do it this year because of COVID.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure we're going to return to the market for next year. But yeah, it's a lot of work. There's no doubt, but it keeps us. It keeps people from to the farm and bothering me.
Yes, because they've been there so long, everyone knows you. They do want to all find out, what's the latest thing going on with Howard.
Not in the farm, and and there's that. And I do go down there, and it's like I could spend 2 hours just wandering around and talking and meeting. And I was there once, and Nicole Kidman and her husband were lolly-dollying through the farmer's market. Keith Urban, is that his name? She's married to Keith Urban.
Sure.
Yeah, I know. How do I know that? And you never know who you're going to meet there.
Yeah.
So it's always a lot of fun. It's a very crowded market, a lot of fun and intense, but I love farmers market. It's not for everybody, but if you like people and you like the wheeling and the dealing, it's a great gig, and it's nice. It's nice money at that time of the year when we're not doing when the horticultural things slows down. It's a nice outlet for us.
Because how you've built that is that, so the horticulture is heavy spring into the early summer. Then you're growing the crops in the summer, and then you really start to pick up and focus more on the farmers markets through the later summer into the fall.
Well, yes and no. I mean, we sell the plants early spring when the market opens up the first Saturday in May. I mean, we do kill a business. We're selling seedlings.
Gotcha.
I could do $2,000 in a day there on herb plants and whatever else we have. No vegetables, just herbs. So it's a great market, and it's a service. And then as the plants kind of peter out, sales go down, but then they start picking back up, and especially with the hemp now, it's actually last year was very steady. We're selling pre-rolled hemp cigarettes and hemp buds by the gram, by the ounce. We're selling whole fresh hemp plants, for $100 a plant. We're hanging them off the back of the truck. People love that. So the sales have stayed very steady through the years. Whereas I used to sell mums and asters. Now we're selling hemp and hemp plants and black
Yeah.
garlic, and we
Yeah.
sell crazy amounts of black garlic there. We sampled it out, and nobody could get by Imelda without her, sticking a piece of black garlic on a baguette in your
Yeah.
mouth to try. So that really pushes it. But you got to really have somebody who really likes being with people or forcing yourself to be with people. It's good. Everybody should like people.
Yes, they
How can I
should.
explain to you that you should like people, Michael? You should like people.
Well, Howard, I'm an introvert. So technically I shouldn't like to go to farmers markets, but I absolutely love farmers markets because I don't know. I love growing things and I love sharing that with people. And then obviously once you get to go into farmers markets, your friends are there. And so you just want to hang out with your friends.
It's like going to a farm convention for me.
Yes.
I don't go, to look at the tractors particularly. I just go there to talk with Jake Guest and see all my friends and, whatever, hang out. So, but for me, that's what the farmers market is. But it's a moneymaker for us. It's an absolute moneymaker, and it's essential, especially in my starting years. It was essential because I even did flea markets back in the day. Saturdays was farmers market. Sunday I was at the Newfane flea market. Almost every day of the week I had to sell something. That was my mantra. Was what dollars are coming in today. I was somewhat fanatical and obsessed with it. And if there's any reason I could point, what made me successful is I was obsessed with success, I guess.
Sales.
Sales. So, you said, what was one of the questions you asked me was, what is the best time? When is the best time to start a farm? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the best time to start a farm was last year.
Yes.
But the second best time to start a farm will be this year. So everybody gets a chance.
Yes. Yes.
It's like, what's that old quote? What was the best time to plant a tree? It was last year. Well, this year is the second best time.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
So Howard, you've been doing this a long time and you've seen a lot of farmers come and go in that time. What would you say is the biggest mistake you see brand new farmers make?
It may sound opposite of each other, but either spending too much or spending too little. All right. So I saw a guy who was a president of IBM move up into Norwich, Vermont, and dropped tons of money, and he was gone within 2 years. He just, it's never going to make you the kind of money that you think it should make you. That's not what it does. But if you also expect that you could, just take a garden rototiller and make a living, you got to be realistic. You got to know what you want. Okay. In terms of what are you trying to do? So the objective of what you're trying to do and where you're trying to do it come into play. So I've seen people fail from trying to be too big and too small, that it was too small to make a living, and just not big enough. They weren't able to scale up. So that's a problem. And I see also, young kids, families, they start out and everybody you could live cheap easily for 1 year. I've seen people, you could live in your Volkswagen microbus or throw up a tent. I mean, hell, I lived in a teepee, but all of a sudden, you got a girlfriend or you get married and you might start having kids. It's different. It changes things. You need to realize that it's not a bad thing to try to attain, a middle-class lifestyle. That should be the goal, because that will allow you to function long-term. That is the key to long-term in growing, is to be financially successful enough to be able to fix, it shouldn't be a choice of fixing the tractor, but, no clothes for the kids. I mean, you've got to be realistic. So setting up a business plan is really important these days. It wasn't as important to me back when I was getting 12 cents a pound for cabbage. But, labor was cheap. I remember I worked for $4 an hour, and that was a good wage. When I, got off-season jobs, $4 an hour in
Wow.
the early 70s, working at the Putney nursery, doing hard work. But I was happy to have it. And so things have changed. Now the stakes are much higher, but prices are much better, but costs are much better. I don't know really how much difference it is, except the acceptance of local grown is much different now. Back then, people were very much brainwashed into going to the supermarket and buying their corn and their cucumbers. And farm stands were pretty much a rarity, even in Vermont. They were around, but they weren't the big deal that they are now. Restaurants did not, I built up a trade with restaurants, but that was not the typical restaurant. Restaurants got their vegetables out of a can or frozen. And so things have changed a lot. But really, my advice is always, I was lucky I started working for somebody. I learned from experienced people. And that's really, if you think you're going to want to run a farm, is work on a farm and see if that's really what you like, and learn. There's so much to learn from established farmers. Again, driving a tractor, operating a wrench. I mean, especially for people not coming from a country background, there's just so many skills to learn that to cram it into, several years is not easy. The truck don't start. What do you do? And why is there oil underneath the engine on the ground? And,
Well, is a massive difference between, is it a hydraulic oil or is it engine oil? Because it depends on, can you actually
or
start
is it
the thing?
diesel?
Yes.
I remember coming back to my car once after, going to the movies, and there was a big puddle under my car, and it turned out the gas tank leaked, and there was a hole, and like half my tank leaked out, and that was not fun.
No.
So yeah, anyway, learning all those, basically they're life skills that you don't normally learn
Yeah.
unless you grew up in the country or on a farm or some other situation, a ranch or whatever. But it's definitely, life skills. You accumulate all this knowledge, and knowing plumbing is a great skill on a farm.
Yes. Yeah.
Knowing electrical is a great skill on the farm. So you could come from a lot of backgrounds, and you bring all these things. Hey, I wish I was a carpenter. I cannot hammer two pieces of wood together well. Okay.
Really, Howard?
Huh?
That surprises me.
I know I'm not great at it. I'm really not great. So I hire carpenters, I hire builders, and they do it right. And if they don't, I make them do it right. But, we put up rudimental stuff, me and Richie, we threw the doors up and this and that. We could do that kind of stuff. So we're much better than we used to be. But and plumbing, I could do easy stuff. I could do the drips. I designed the heated tables, propagation tables, and I hooked it up. Maybe I'm underselling myself, but I'm not a plumber, I'm not an electrician, and I'm not really a carpenter, even though I pretend I could do certain things. But you bring all these skills, and I didn't know about sales. I was very introverted too. I was shy growing up.
Yeah.
I really was. So things have changed.
Yeah. But I think the thing is too, is that farming is, to be a good farmer, you have to know so many different you have to know the plumbing, you have to know the electrical. And yes, you'll get to a point that you will start to outsource those. But at the beginning, being able to do your own is literally going to save you thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars.
It will. It will. But I find establishing relationships with professionals pays off in the long run. Having good relationship with the people that you hire, local people, plumbers, and paying them promptly. Real important. One skill I learned, I worked for UPS for 1 year. And one of the things I learned from UPS is how they built their business, and being paying your vendors promptly, paying the people you do business with promptly, get you to the top of the line. I call up a plumber, my plumber comes. I call up an electrician, the electrician comes. Why? Because he knows he's going to get paid really quickly. I mean, what else do you want? As a farmer, I deliver, I want to get paid, I get checks, 1 week and 2 weeks. It's awesome. That's the kind of accounts you have. You don't want troubling accounts, and you don't want to be a troubled account. So, be a good vendor, be a good merchant, and pay. So that's a skill that you do, that I do learn. Be good in business.
So Howard, where can people find out more about your farm and all that you do?
Listen to this podcast. Now you can actually get up-to-date stuff on Instagram. If you're on social media, High Meadows Farm, I've got a pretty good Instagram feed. It's only beautiful pictures of the farm and my crops and Imelda. So it's always, you could start there, High Meadows Farm on Instagram and High Meadows Farm on Facebook. And if you punch in looking for High Meadows Farm on Facebook, every state has a High Meadows Farm. So you need to punch in, you'll wind up at a horse farm in Missouri. So you got to do High Meadows Farm, Vermont, and it'll narrow it down, and then you'll find me. And also under my name on Facebook. Yeah, I post way too many pictures and my meals that I've become a decent cook. So I'm not a good carpenter, but I can make delicious food using my ingredients. And so I'm starting to post recipes now too. So
okay, I will have to check that out.
And
Now that we've started to do mushrooms, I've actually started to get back in the kitchen a lot more because obviously, now I got to get a bunch more recipes, and so I got to start building that side of the business out. So,
no, that could be a good field. For some reason, there's been several people around here who've tried doing mushroom farming and growing, and none of them panned out. And I think it's a matter of, as I mentioned, scale. Is it a hobby? Or is it going to be an avocation? And to scale up mushroom growing, you really got to start in a different place than just doing it small. It's a different deal. I think there's room for larger scale local mushroom growing, but I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen even the hobby guys make it after a year or two, and I'm not sure why.
That's interesting too, because there is a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of value adding you can do to them, and just your margin on them is really good. So I'm really surprised there's not more people really doing a great job with it, because it is such an opportunity right now. And obviously part of it too is that Americans have been accustomed to just three different names of mushrooms, which are actually all the same type of mushroom. The white button, all of that portobello, they're actually the same mushroom, just at different stages of growth.
Right. Baby Bella, portobello. Right.
Yeah. So if you go to Europe, 12 to 15 different types is what everyone is used to. So I think that's part of the thing is America needs to know that there's a lot more. And so obviously that's part of our job as a farmer is to educate them with, how many types there are, just how good they are for you. They're incredible for you. They're one of the only foods, I think vegan foods you can get that have vitamin D in them. Mm-hmm. So obviously meats have vitamin D, but there's really no vegetables that have vitamin D.
Antioxidants. It's a great food.
Oh, it's fabulous.
It's a wonderful, wonderful, flavorful, incredible healer.
Yeah, and the lion's mane, just the brain food that the lion's mane are, it's amazing. That helps with PSTD. It helps with so many different things. So
mushrooms are one of the foods of the future. Nutrition. Yeah. Turmeric, ginger. There are a lot of niche products that people could get into that could be very profitable. I know a lot of guys, a lot of farmers who are doing that now. So they're getting into that. Well, this has been fun. It's been great. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for coming on, Howard. I know we've, I forget, when did we meet? Was it 2000? It was probably New England vegetable growers, one of the first times. And
I went to one of your seminars down in the boondocks of Massachusetts once. Might have been in Orange, Mass. or something.
Yes.
I don't know. You're talking at a town hall.
Yes, I
said,
remember that.
okay, there you go.
Yes.
And you gave a really good presentation. You ace the presentation award. You're really great with the whole thing. So you really have it down.
Yeah. Well, we're trying. We're getting better. I think that's, and I think so one of the things I did take a break. Well, take a break from full-time farming when we started in 2015 for a couple of years when I moved to Ohio.
Mhm.
And I really, really regretted that. And that caused a fair amount of friction between my wife and myself because I really love farming. But I think it was actually really, really good for me because it actually helped me step away and step so much more into learning the business side. And then obviously working with hundreds of farmers around the US and around the world. I feel like I have a completely different perspective on farming now.
Well, that was like my semi-sabbatical.
Yeah.
Getting into, the sales size and traveling around New England and looking and, the country, because I would go to California and things to meet my people I work for. And you learn a lot of things doing a lot of different things, but I got back into it so energized and hungry to grow. And my international travel, when I was going, we didn't even talk about that, but that's been like one of the greatest highlights of my life. And I went to Nepal a couple of times and El Salvador and Myanmar, and working with, small growers of you meet somebody there and it looks like here the size farm that they run would be somebody's garden, and you find out that they're making a living from from their farm, behind their house. And and $700 a year would be their income from that farm, and that was what they lived on. So it's humbling, and you realize that we are blessed with so much opportunity and material things in this country that I felt ashamed that I wasn't pushing myself to the potential that we had. And when I came home, I ramped up my vegetable production, most to the dismay of my wife at the time of, what are you doing? 150,000 onion transplants? It's like, I don't understand,
Yes.
And so that, I really ramped it up because I just felt the responsibility. That, if I'm going to go talking to people, in these countries I really got to do it as well, and not waste opportunity. And that's what I've done. And so, but that's been one of the most fulfilling things of my life, is the international travel. And I wish more people could travel and not go to just the resorts, which I love too. But, to see how the world really is, it's a great thing. Well, maybe you can include a little of that too when you edit me down.
Absolutely.
But, all right. Anyway.
All right. Thank you, Howard.
Hey, take care. See you around.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Looking to start or grow your farm business? You need a compelling farm plan that you can share with investors, convince your significant other with, or just to give yourself peace of mind. We have created a new program called the Start Your Farm Intensive. In it, you'll learn how to develop your farm idea to make sure you take all the factors into consideration for your context and your climate. You'll learn how to craft a one-page business plan that helps clearly define your target customer and lay out the necessary characteristics of your business. You will understand the 3 financial documents that every farm needs to fill out to make sure you are making money. And we'll give you all that as templates too, so you have the templates to fill out for your farm business. We'll also go through funding, so where to go for funding for the various stages and parts of your business. Starting a farm is hard. Starting a farm without a proven plan is almost impossible. Join us today. Go to growingfarmers.com/start for more information. Now, what did past students have to say? Corey says, the exercises and spreadsheets helped me make the learning process easier and more real. Jenna says, I gained the support system and resources I needed for when I'm ready for the next step. And finally, the worksheets make you think out every aspect of the business step by step. Go ahead, join us today, growingfarmers.com/start. So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.